Welcome to Team Cardboard. From the table talk, we are focusing on how to support hard of hearing and deaf gamers today. And I'm going to introduce myself, and then William and Jenna are going to introduce themselves. I'm Arie. I am a content creator for Team Cardboard, and I recently learned that I am hard of hearing. William, what?
Hi, I'm William. I'm also a content creator, and I have been hard of hearing my entire life. I had a cochlear implant for about 20 years now.
Hi, I'm Jenna. I am a content creator in the classroom, but, just a teacher to people before this year. And I have been hard of hearing for probably longer than I realized, but I've had a hearing aid for about 5 years. So pretty excited to be here. Welcome to the club, Arie, because, gotta love that hearing aid lifestyle.
I appreciate the welcome. So I guess my first thing is, do you have any tips for me being recently learning I'm hard of hearing?
Ask your audiologist to turn up the human tone so that you can eavesdrop on other people. Like if you have hearing aid programmed right, you can switch it to superhuman mode and hear people at the next table over. Highly recommend.
So, the big thing for me is just having people look at me when they're speaking. I don't know, since you're new to being hard of hearing, this may not apply to you as much, but I've always been a lip reader. I learned when I was very young, and I don't even consciously know how to do it anymore because it's just very ingrained at this point. But I have a much easier time understanding people if I can see their mouths when they're speaking. So that's the really big thing for me, is having people look at me. The other thing that I will do is, and again, I don't know if this would apply to you or not, but I am completely deaf on both sides technically, but I have an implant on this side, I have a microphone on this side, so I only hear on this side, I can't hear anything over here. So when I'm gaming, I like to avoid having anybody right on my right side, because then they're talking into my bad ear.
Oh, I hadn't thought about placing people to where I could hear them. Let's see. How many players do you usually play with? Because I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes if there's a lot of people in a game, it gets to be a lot.
Yeah, honestly, the biggest thing that's been helpful for me is cultivating that teacher voice. I mean, I'm that person in the game who's like, all right, side chatter's got to stop. Because when people are kind of having side conversations during the stuff I have to listen to, it becomes very distracting. And yeah, I mean, just making sure that you're in a game space where people are respectful of each other. I don't know how to, that's just really the only thing for it, I feel like, is
So I don't think I really have an answer to that. Doesn't in terms of hearing loss. I generally prefer 4-player games, but that's not because I'm deaf. It's because I really hate downtime.
That's fair. I also hate the gap of time where you're just sitting and waiting and nothing else.
So I generally only go for larger games if it's one of those games where you have simultaneous play, so you're not really waiting on people.
That's fair. I should look. I don't actually have any games that I like that are like that. Do you have any recommendations?
Well, I've got a couple that I like, and they are totally opposite ends of the complexity scale. So for example, one of my favorite games is Antiquity, which the name always confuses me because it's set in the Middle Ages. But Antiquity and Roads and Boats, Hospitals of Blood Slaughter, there is technically turn order, but a lot of the time what you're doing doesn't interfere with other players, so you're encouraged to play at the same time unless you're going to run into each other just to speed up the game, and it actually works out really well. I had a 6-player game of Roads and Boats, and I found that it took about the same amount of time as the 3 or 4-player games I would normally do. So those are the heavy economic end of the spectrum I like. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there is Dutch Blitz. It's now available as the Grotto. And this plays technically 3 to 12 players, but the sweet spot is 5 to 7. Maybe 4 to 7 is about what I would want to play with. And it's everybody has a deck of cards and everybody is playing at once. It's actually kind of aerobic. I almost got my glasses knocked off once.
Nice. I mean, I even think games like, a Wingspan or something where it's not really simultaneous play, but you've got your own player mat and you're working on it and you're strategizing for yourself kind of without too much necessity for hearing or like waiting for other people to be doing things. I think that can be a good type of game, especially in these situations where, people talking could be a lot.
One thing that's been nice during the pandemic is that, I've seen my friends to play board games in person since before the pandemic started, but I've been doing a lot of asynchronous gaming, and that's nice because obviously sound generally doesn't come into it at all. I found that's actually the online gaming has had its benefits and its drawbacks. There's the benefit, obviously, as you're playing online, even if you are doing audio, it's a lot easier when you can just set up your sound system the way you want it to. Right now I'm listening to 2 of you. You're both in quiet environments. I have my induction loop set up so I can't hear anything except what's coming out of my computer. So that's helpful. A lot of it is just as asynchronous, so we're just typing instead of actually talking. So that's very helpful to me as well. So I've been doing a lot of gaming on 18xx.games and Board Game Arena. The flip side of that is a lot of people when they're playing, they still want to be talking, so they're just firing up a chat room on Discourse, and that is like, for me, it's bad enough trying to understand what people are saying normally, but when you do an audio channel and you can't see your faces, that doesn't work for me at all.
Yeah. What do you think of channels? Do you know if any of those have like auto-gen captions? Like, Google Meet's got that great caption.
Yeah, Google Meet has probably the best captions I've seen so far. My team at work uses Microsoft Teams, which also has pretty decent captions. Zoom, I generally recommend people avoid because you can get captions, but they're not by default. You have to pay for them. WebEx has captions, but the person who starts the meeting has to turn them on, and then they're on for everybody. So Zoom and WebEx, I generally recommend against if you have other options. Like I said, Teams tend to be pretty decent, although I've seen some interesting missed captions. And it's not free. And then obviously Google Meet, I've only used it a couple of times, but it seems to be the best. They seem to have the best software so far, which is not super surprising since I guess they've been working on it for a while. When they first started rolling out captions for YouTube, automatic captions there, you would lucky if they got 2 words right out of a sentence, but they've improved a lot.
Yeah, I definitely love using Google Meet in my classroom. I always teach on Google Meet, and it really annoys me when people use Zoom because there isn't that caption functionality, and we have so many students who are deaf and hard of hearing, and it's not especially now, the most frustrating thing has been switching from being totally online to being hybrid, where we have kids in person and online. So now all of a sudden I have to teach in a mask. And it's so much worse. It's so frustrating because I'm seeing the kids I have who are deaf and hard of hearing, I'm seeing their comprehension just go way down in all of their classes because now their teachers are wearing masks.
I know. I haven't been able to understand anybody in public since the pandemic started. Other than that, generally, I only have two problems with masks. One is that I make my glasses fall out of school now. The other is I can't freaking understand anybody.
Wait, you're cutting
Wait,
out.
pause a second.
Wait, we can't. You're frozen. We can't read your lips.
Okay, let's try this one more time. You froze so much. That entire thing was illegible. So one more time.
What part? I was just saying, I can't understand anybody. I can't even understand my wife if she's wearing a mask. So, although it's funny. It's funny, we were out and we were out the other day and my kid got upset because his mask slipped down under his nose and he knows it goes over the nose.
Good.
That's
cute. He's aware. Yeah, at school, I just nod. And it's like, I actually wear my Bluetooth headphones all the time when I'm out, like walking in the hallways. And I hope that people will be like not talking to me because I just don't know what they're saying. Like, and nothing is worse than having to like, what? And like, you're trying to lean closer to them and they're just like, but every once in a while, someone will still try to talk to me. And I'm just like, really? Stop. Just send me an email. I don't know what you're saying.
Yes. My wife picked up some of those clear masks, and I didn't really find that those were that useful. I mean, you can see a little bit, but it's distorted by the plastic, so it's still really difficult.
What do you think about the difference between kinds of masks? Because one of the things that we'd been talking about with our audiologists and our deaf and hard of hearing teachers was early in the pandemic, they were kind of just giving us anecdotal information about like, hey, if you have to test a student who you think is hard of hearing or anything like that, use those like regular surgical masks, the ones that are thinner, because they were saying that it almost helps, like you can almost see through them and it's better than the cloth ones or the like KN95 ones. Do you find that makes any difference?
I can't say I've really noticed, but pretty much the only time I interact with people outside my family these days is grocery shopping, and I can tell you that whatever mask they wear at Target, I can't understand people through them. And my family all has cloth masks with filters in them.
Yeah.
I haven't noticed a difference. I also only ever interact when we're grocery shopping and picking things up real quickly, but I haven't noticed a difference between the cloth masks and any other mask. It might help a bit.
So, yeah.
Just curious if you guys have noticed.
I guess my workplace had sent out an email a few months ago saying that they will provide see-through masks if needed, but which is nice. But I've chosen to work from home for the last year, so I haven't actually seen the ones that they're doing. I don't know how well those worked out. For me, I find that having the virtual meetings, I actually have an easier time understanding everybody than I'd be able to if it was a regular in-person meeting. So the pandemic has been nice to me in that way, and that's a lot easier for me to suffer through all the meetings I have to go through.
It does force people to take turns speaking. It's nice.
Yeah. I don't know. This is actually the biggest challenge I have in online meetings, although I have this difficulty in normal groups too, is I have a very hard time telling when somebody stops speaking. So it's hard for me to jump in without accidentally speaking over someone else.
Yeah, also that's just my excuse for interrupting constantly. But no, that's seriously a struggle.
When I'm using Teams, what I will actually do in a meeting is I will usually just type what I want to say, and that way I can hear what people are saying, or at least follow the captions for what they're saying, and I can just type and chat, and then I'm not interrupting anybody else.
I love the back channel. That is actually one of the things that I run when I'm co-teaching. I'm just like in the back channel in the chat, like, hey guys, what do you think about, like, just doing the simultaneous engagement piece there, because we get a lot of kids who get distracted, or they're like, you know, they're just not on the same wavelength as the person who's talking out loud. So you got to like try to get them from both sides.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of the time in my meetings, you've got you've got your main talk bit where somebody's speaking, but then you have also people chatting on the side, just still paying attention. But it's really nice. If you miss something, you can ask about it without interrupting the main flow.
Yeah, in so many ways, the online platform has been great. Like, it's really been nice in some ways.
Yeah, I really appreciate it because I'm not currently in school, but I've done for another organization I'm in. We've done virtual meets, and I find it really helpful because the way we run it is everyone has to mute unless you're actively talking. So I can automatically figure out who's talking based on who has the icon. And I found that, and also on Google Meets, it automatically pops the person up to the front. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the best. I can just know who's talking without trying to look around and look like I'm looking for ghosts.
That's definitely been a challenge for me. Is normally I'll hear somebody talking, and I have to look around to see whose mouth is moving. This is actually one of the main reasons I'm not a teacher anymore. I actually used to be a middle school teacher, but the kids figured out pretty quickly that if I couldn't see the mouse, I couldn't tell who was talking, and that was the whole thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just let them believe I'm omniscient, and I do that thing where I'm like, well, I'm not going to call anybody out, but 3 people were just having a private conversation. Just make up a number every time, and I think I know it was them. Don't watch this, children. You never know.
The omnipotence.
But yeah, the whole video thing is great. I never really did much online gaming before the pandemic. I did a bit on BSW over a decade ago, but not until now. And it's really nice just being able to meet up with people and largely do it in a way that my hearing doesn't come into play. I have had times when I did a video call in order to explain how to teach or how to play a game, and again, it's just so much easier when you just pop somebody up and have them directly in your ear. So I really miss getting together in person, but I can imagine continuing to play online even after the pandemic's over.
So we were here, right, to talk about like accommodations and ways to make gaming more deaf friendly, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really want to know. Like, that's mostly why I was like, yeah, I want to be in on this, because it's, how do you do that? Do you guys?
I feel like the biggest thing for me is most definitely the people I'm playing with. There are a couple games that I found that will have like soundtracks that go with them, and will have cues with the soundtracks. And especially a lot of party games will have that, and I can't follow along because then there's people talking and noise, and I'm supposed to hear something specific, and it becomes way too much. And for those, I feel like, especially if you have someone who will have a hard time participating, is just don't play those kinds of games with them, and try and find either a game like that doesn't have the auditory cues, or find a different game to play.
Yeah, and there are definitely games which I feel like I like the idea of, but I have never played them because I know my hearing would be an issue. Especially like, I can't think of the name, but those games where everybody's trying to work together to do something, but you have to keep talking really fast and communicating what everybody's doing. I know I would never be able to follow along with that, and I flatly will not play negotiation games.
Yeah. I've also found, I can't remember the name of the game, but it was where one person was hidden behind like a screen type of thing, a board, and everyone else was sitting around them. And that was super hard for me because I couldn't see the person, and they were always end up talking like to the table rather than the people at the table. And that always made it a little more difficult. We ended up just making them stand up every time that they wanted to talk, which was fine with me because I wasn't the person doing the exercise. They got a little bit annoyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling like a Mysterium when you're talking about that. That's what I'm picturing. Like,
that was it. Yep, that was.
One other thing that I found as a challenge is when nobody really knows the game, and you'll have somebody who's trying to teach out a rule book, and the person doing that, a lot of people would just start reading like in a monotone, and I just can't understand a word they're saying, and that's probably one reason I usually end up as the teacher.
yeah. I always like a Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu where the game has the instructions, but they're really in the world. So I get to do a real dramatic reading. You're an investigator and I think so yeah, this is what I wanted to get in on this for, because when you're in the special education world and you're teaching, so much of you are what you do is try to find ways to do kind of a universal design piece. At least what I do is trying to make sure that when I start planning a lesson, I have thought about the fact that people are going to be hard of hearing and people are going to need pictures and words and audio so that you can get that information in multiple different ways. And so I don't know. I was really hoping we could have some ideas about like how to do that in a board game setting, which I don't know what they are, but like, I don't know. I love my friends. I'll print up pamphlets. Like, here's what we do. I love those little infographic cards. I feel like those always help. Just so you have a little reminder for anything that would have been auditory, so you know what it is. I don't know. Yeah. I wish there were more ways to just make it so that these games that aren't intuitively great can be better.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I found is with the kind of hearing loss I have, or just the way it affects me or whatever, is in loud environments, I cannot follow anything, and like with background noise. So I can't remember where we were gaming, but there was always a super loud fan, and I could not hear over the fan, and I had to ask people to repeat themselves so many times. So a lot of it is just environment for me. And like we used to play in an open area, like, well, not anymore because of the pandemic, but with at a gaming store, they would have where you could come in and play games, and they'd have a couple tables set up, and I could not figure out like how to listen to just what I needed to hear, because there was always like other people playing or the door going off. And so I feel like a lot of it is, for me at least, is the environment that I'm playing in, unless the game that I'm playing.
Yeah, I definitely do better in a quiet environment. One thing I liked about Board Game Geek Con is that the last few years they've had a lot of smaller breakout rooms that you can go to. So even if you're just finding people in the big room, if you have a game where you need to be able to hear the other players, you can go off to a smaller room where it's quiet to be able to play. Now, my experience has been that it's not just the volume level, it's the type of sounds, because it's people speaking in the background that gives me trouble. If it's just random noise, that can actually be okay. The other year, I was at an arcade in Madison for a friend's birthday party, and somebody else was repeating what the guy when we are checking in or buying tokens, whatever it is. Somebody repeated what he said, but I was actually able to hear the guy even though it was noisy, because the noise was arcade games, it was beeps and so on. But when there's multiple people talking, that I can't do, because I can't differentiate between what the person I'm trying to listen to is saying and what the other person at the table is saying, and just focusing on the conversation that I'm interested in. When the sounds are very different, it's a lot easier than if it's both speech.
I'm taking notes because I think that we are totally going to want to have like a top 10 things you can do to make all of your friends enjoy your gaming sessions at the end of this. And I'm writing notes. Also, Michelle, if you're watching this, you should totally add links to games we talk about or something, like captions. Put something in. Get in this one post.
But I mean, for the most part, I mean, I think I don't normally play a lot of games that are very heavy on top gen because I'm not real big on party type games. But I'm into heavy Euro games, heavy economic games, where you spend most of your time just glaring at the board. But I mean, that is a coping mechanism, is that I don't do the type of games where my hearing would be a bigger problem.
What do you think? So one of the things that I like to do as a compensatory strategy, I guess, I don't know, I'm just now kind of realizing this, but when we were talking about Mysterium and stuff, one of those, I don't know if it's obscure, but one of those rules that you can use is instead of having the ghost talk, they knock on things. And that's like 1 knock for no and 2 for yes or something. And so I like to be a real stickler with that kind of thing. And I also like to be a stickler and really, I guess what I do is actually I start it and just hope that other people do it. But I'll do like a hand motion for passing. Like, have you guys ever played, this is obscure, but do you guys play card games? Has anyone played euchre? No, it's just me? Okay. There's this card game. It's like spades or hearts. And so in my family, we always play this card game. And there's like 5 different ways that you can pass or call things up. And almost all of them are like hand motions that you use. So I really, when I am playing a social game or a party game, I'll kind of incorporate whatever as like my thing that I do once I've done my turn. Like I'll just like do a flourish or whatever. Like if I'm playing like we just got Charty Party, which is probably a terrible example because it's one of those ones where everyone puts their thing in at once and it's like a Cards Against Humanity thing. But like right before I pick them up, I'll like put my hands down and be like, this is my sign that I'm like picking them up. That's it. Your time's up. Or I'll like put mine in and like flip in place, and does that help anyone with stuff? That
actually kind of reminds me is like we kind of have, sometimes we put in place the rule that like you can't talk with your cards up. Like while you're looking at your cards, you're not allowed to talk. Not because we don't want to like discuss the cards, but because if you have your cards in front of your face, it is way harder to understand you.
Love that.
That's a good rule. So have you ever played blackjack and Vegas?
No.
So, because I mean, if you're not familiar, and when they go to, you can pass, and generally when people pass, they'll just tap the table or whatever, because it's noisy. So.
Yeah, that's euchre. You knock on the table if you want to pass. That's.
So, but it's a lot of noise in the casinos, and you're gonna stay, and you generally just use hand signs instead of talking, just to make sure that nobody misinterprets. But of course, obviously, there's the extra incentive since you got money on the line.
That always helps incentivize me, although I'm pretty competitive in general. So, all right, cool. Yeah, I like those.
Sorry, I'm looking over the questions I have, and I'm trying to remember if there's any I haven't asked yet.
This makes you the most prepared person here for sure.
Oh, yeah.
That's because I was panicking earlier about how this was going to go, so I wrote myself a little intro in like 5 questions, and I know I asked 3 of them, and I couldn't remember which ones I asked.
I'm also an over-preparing stressor, so I relate.
So it's like I actually do accessibility stuff. I've done a couple of talks on accessibility at programming conferences, but that tends to be more in terms of how do you make your software accessible. I've never really thought about it in terms of board gaming. And the thing is that it's just so individual. is even though we all have some degree of hearing loss, we probably need different things depending on our own abilities and our play groups and the types of games that we play.
I agree. I found that to be true with just about anything. I also have another thing where I have trouble reading, and I have found that that is such a weird combination of hearing loss and trouble reading, because I've gotten better at reading, but I'm very, very slow at it. So a lot of people, if I have trouble hearing things and I need them to repeat it, they just write it out and expect me to just read it really. And it's one of the things where I'm like, that won't help me. I know you're trying to, but just try and like rephrasing how people talk. Like if you say the same thing 4 times and I'm still asking you to repeat it, try saying it in a different way.
Well, with my writing, rewriting it down would definitely not help.
Handwriting, the bane of people with hearing loss.
No, I mean, I really do like having stuff written down, but I mean, you know the saying, this mean to be an email, and I really prefer emails because not only is it faster, but it's less open to misinterpretation because I can go back and see exactly what's written down instead of having to rely on what I heard. So this is, again, one of the reasons why I tend to be the teacher when I'm playing a game. Is the easiest way for me to learn is just to read the rule book, and then once I've read the rule book, I can teach the game. So that's easiest for me, and then it ends up being easiest for everybody else too, because then they don't have to read the rule book.
It's pleasant. It's a nice combo of things you need and what they need.
All right, here's my list so far, guys. I don't know how this chat works. There you go.
Ooh.
I don't know if these are it, but here's some of the things we talked about.
Yeah, you might want to read this list out loud because somebody watching the video probably won't see it, and then they'll be like,
oh, yeah. Well, that's why I put it first. I wanted to run it by you guys secretly so you could add to it and change. I don't want to reveal it to the public yet. It's not through beta testing.
It looks good to me. I've only read through half of them so far.
I mean, I can dramatically read it if you guys want me to. That's what I'm here for.
Yes, the dramatic reading.
I think maybe that should be on the list. All right, number 1, reduce side conversations so that people can hear when important things are happening. Number 2, no background music. Just like no capes, no background music. Number 3, no talking with your cards up. You've already got stuff to think about, so don't talk if your cards are up. Number 4, use gestures and signs when you can. Like, they don't have to be real signs. You don't have to speak sign language. Just, if you're going to pass, maybe do it with your hand slapping on the table. Maybe, point at the person who's talking, because that would super help me. Could be fine. Could be a new fun thing to incorporate to your games. Number 5, have the rules on the table and pass them around so that people can remind themselves, especially when you're having to explain them out loud. And the all-important number 6, be dramatic whenever possible.
Just in general, that just makes gaming more fun. Whenever you can be dramatic, be dramatic.
That's true. If there's space for drama, embed it.
Emphasize, yeah. Yeah, and I will add on that if you're having trouble being understood, speaking very slowly like that does not help.
What about speaking?
So, it's like if I'm having trouble understanding you, you don't need to slow way down. You don't need to yell. I just try to speak loudly.
Yeah, my mom does this thing where whenever I have trouble hearing her, for whatever reason, she says the same thing, but 10 times quieter. And I'm like, how is that supposed to help me? Why would you do that? And it's the opposite immediate reaction that most people have, but I find it absolutely hilarious.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I love it. All right, I'm glad we got to 7. That feels like a better number than 6. I feel like we've got room for 3 more if we want to make it an even 10. So if people want to like comment on the video or something.
Yeah.
What the next 3 nominees are.
But like you said earlier, rephrasing, saying something differently works out better. I know that for me, when I'm listening to people speak, I generally don't get all the words. I will get some fraction of the words, and then I can fill in most of what I miss from context. But what will happen sometimes if I don't understand something and somebody repeats and they say it the same way, then I will miss the same words over again. And if I can't figure out what those words are, then hearing the rest of the sentence repeatedly isn't going to help me any.
All right, I guess I'll just say this out loud instead of typing it because I got really excited. I was like, I too believe that our deaf and hard of hearing brains are basically supercomputers that have tiny bits of puzzles and basically come up with everything else from context. I have totally, oh man, yeah, the number of times that I've come up with something I think someone has said and they said something totally different, but I kind of got the gist, so.
Oh yeah, I also appreciate it if I misheard you and I start answering a question that you didn't ask. If you stop me and then tell me what the question you did ask was, because there's been multiple times where I thought I've answered a question, then someone went, "Oh, so what about the question I asked?" And I'm like, "Oh, what? That wasn't it."
Or just pretend forever. Just be like, "Oh my gosh, now I have another question."
Just give them a bunch of information that they didn't need.
Hey, you know what? If men can do it with mansplaining, you can do it with
Yeah. So did you figure out if we got through all of your questions?
We did. Oh my goodness. No, I forgot again. Oh, so I don't know if you have like a few things that the people who are playing with, I think we already touched on this, but the things that the people who are playing with you can do, like even if it's not, like for me, it's like turning on the lights, because for whatever reason, a lot of the time, people will play like with like the lights dimmed, and that just, I can't see my cards like that, and I most definitely can't see the person next to me and across from me like that.
I always say I can't hear in the dark.
What's that?
I always say I can't hear in the dark.
Yeah.
This is one reason why I don't go camping, because you got people sitting around the campfire and you can't see anybody's face.
I'm such an ambiance person, though. I'll give up the being able to hear for the ambiance usually. Like, I'm 100% the person who's like, all right, guys, we're playing Cthulhu, but it's going to be candlelit. So, but everyone's got a candle in front of them. So, but yeah, it is true. I frequently can't hear, but sometimes it's worth it for me.
That's kind of like, there's a few games that we've created soundtracks for, or have soundtracks already included, and I'm like, okay, I just can't pass up the soundtrack. Like, I can't hear very well, but I absolutely adore the music to this. So sometimes, if that's the case, I'll just listen to it later, or I'll start by listening to the music, and then we'll get into the game and play.
Yeah, or just like force a pause, or like find ways around it. Like, there are ways sometimes, but not usually, I guess.
It does get irritating when you have a game where sharing is a required part of that. My family likes to play those escape room in a box games, and the ones that have the apps. Occasionally, there's something where you have to listen to it, play music, whatever, and use that to solve the puzzle. And if we have something like that, then there darn well better be a way that you can get the answer without listening to the sound, because I am not getting that.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Yeah, I've had a couple experiences like that, because my family likes the same thing, like the escape rooms in a box. We haven't played too many of those that have an app, but we've played a couple others that are have apps and need sound. I can't remember any of them right now because why would I remember them when I need to know them?
Yeah. Right. I actually had one of them where you had to call a phone number and listen to recording to get your clue to move on. Unfortunately, I am the only one in my family who doesn't use phones.
Yeah, that's awful. And also reminds me of those things where Google makes you like type the things, to prove you're not a robot. And I never get them right. And they have that second option where you can like listen to it and it's the worst. Those are so bad.
Yeah, I never use those. I never use these things on my websites because I think that we're probably at the point where computers can answer them better than we can anyway.
Yeah. I've had the exact same experience and I agree, computers could 100% do those. I don't know who they're joking.
I get them wrong every time. Like, I've never gotten them right on my first try because I'm an overanalyzer, and I'm like, dyslexic, and I'm like, A-X. Hate it.
And I also don't like it when they like don't tell you if there's numbers or letters or numbers and letters, because then you're just looking. Yep. Gotta love the computer security.
Yeah, I just the newer ones are probably better. You've probably seen the ones where it's like pick all the squares that have a stoplight in them. So let's say you got some reading comprehension.
There's one where it's like right on the corner. I overanalyze those every time. I hate them.
The pictures sometimes are perfect. I can't remember what I was trying to log into, but there was one time where I guessed so many wrong that it was just like, all right, just like which ones are purple? And it's just like, all right, here's all the green. Just choose the purple one. So I'm like, okay, I can do this one. I got this. I'm thankfully not colorblind, so that is what I can do.
Maybe we're just actually robots.
Maybe that's the secret.
Yeah, it's just the glitch in the Matrix. We think we're people, but they know. They know.
All right, so I guess we should probably wrap this up. So I would say, to summarize, if you are hard of hearing and you need something to be able to participate fully, a big thing is just tell your game group, because most people, there's always some people, but most people want everybody to have a good time, and they're willing to, make accommodations if you tell them what you need. But most people don't have the experience to know what you need, so you need to verbalize any accommodations you might need. On the other hand, if you're the person who's trying to play with somebody who has a disability, just listen to them when they tell you what they need. It's usually not a big deal. The type of things we've talked about, like look at the person when you're speaking, try to cut down side conversation when there's something important going on. It's not really a big deal, but it can make things a lot easier for everyone.
Absolutely. I love that. Great synopsis there. Great synthesizing. And also, I would say if you are like hosting games, especially if it's not like a regular gaming group and stuff, I think really to be the one who sets the expectations makes all the difference. Like to be the person who doesn't put it on the person who's deaf or hard of hearing, or make them, like if they come to you and they're like, hey, yeah, I'm nervous about this gaming thing, and I'm deaf or I'm hard of hearing, maybe ask them what they need, first of all, and then be the one who presents that to the group. So be the one who says, yeah, we're gonna have the lights on. It just makes it easier for everyone to hear. Or, hey guys, cut out the side conversations because it's super distracting, and not putting it on the person who's hard of hearing, because it's not fun to be the party pooper who's like, everyone be quiet. Like,
it's a good point. I've always been super upfront about the fact that I'm deaf, but I know there's a lot of people who would like to be a little more circumspect about that. They don't necessarily want their business out there for everyone.
They're not students.
And of course, this is even more true of people who have a hidden disability and they want to keep it hidden.
Yeah. Or like, honestly, I'm just, like I said, I'm thinking about my students and stuff who, you know, I don't think that a lot of kids and even a lot of people with less severe hearing disabilities, I don't know that we always realize why things are more important to us, you know? I don't think that I would even have consciously thought, oh, it's because of my hearing loss that I can't hear when people are talking. Like it's because of this that I struggle when these lights are low. You know, it's such an ingrained thing. You know, I've always lip read, but I didn't know until 5 years ago when I went to the audiologist why I could only hear when I had my glasses on. Like it's just such a thing that I feel like is more on the host and the hostess of a gaming situation. And as someone who is in both situations, you know, I really work hard when I host games or I have people over because I want everyone to be comfortable. And, you know, as a teacher, I'm here from a universal design for learning method where I think that, you know, there could be people at your gaming table. It's not necessarily that they have their disability and they want to keep it hidden. It might be that they're not diagnosed. You know, maybe they don't know yet. Maybe they've been going like Arie and I for most of their adult lives and they have no idea that they have hearing loss. And I think that some of the stuff we've talked about are just great things to do all the time. Does it really make your gaming less good if you have the lights on? Like, is having dramatic gestures that you use that makes everyone's gaming better. Like,
This is actually something that I always emphasize when I'm giving accessibility talk, is that even though these various accommodations may be targeted to that particular subgroup, a lot of the time they actually make things easier for everybody, or at least for a much larger percentage of the population than you would expect. You know, it's like I have to have captions on to watch TV. I can't watch TV without the captions. But then those aren't just for deaf people. You know, it's for people who are in a noisy environment, whether it's because they're trying to watch TV at a bar or they have children. Or anything like that. When I was teaching, I actually used to tell my kids they used to turn on caption. Well, their parents to go ahead and turn on the caption because that gives the kids get more reading experience. So it's that type of thing where even though you have something specifically because one person in the group needs it, it can actually make it easier for everyone, even if they don't necessarily realize it.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add really quickly onto the caption things because because I'm dyslexic and I learned I was dyslexic far before I learned I was hard of hearing. My family would always have the captions on, and it actually helped me learn to read or help me learn to read because I could see the word and hear it and figure out what it was actually like. I could connect the word to the written word, and I just think that that's a great situation. That's exactly what you're talking about. Is that's not what it was intended for, but it still really helps and works.
Yeah, I'm 100% a UDL. Like, there are just some things that everyone should do, and it makes things better. And I personally think that it's always better to have the captions on by default. And then, like, if for some reason someone really hates them, that person can turn them off. Like, just make it easier for people.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close this off. And this is when I realized I never wrote a conclusion. So thank you, Jenna, and thank you, William, and for coming and talking. I had a great time, and I also learned a lot. I will be stealing all of your ideas. Thank you to the people who are watching for watching and trying to make the gaming experience more inclusive and easier, not just for people who are hard of hearing, but just people at your table. And we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm going to